entered Avalon Bottom, the preserve that divided the city with a valley of trees and streams, following the gurgle of a creek, his staff guiding him in the pre-dawn hour. Redwoods loomed all around, and to his heavy eyes, the wooden columns seemed to hold the crimson sky aloft. Among tree kind, the redwoods were unique in their ability to bottle evil and remain uncorrupted. He had many to choose from. Long ago, he had selected neither the tallest, nor the thickest, nor the oldest, for such seemed sacrilege, nor did he burden many trees with the task. Just one. He called it the Azazel Tree. He hiked to the valley floor, where 4 streams merged and flowed around an island mound. He trudged through the moat, water chilling him to the knees. After a 10-foot climb, Seth came to it, the Azazel Tree, his sandals dripping in mud. He circled the tree for 7 paces, brushing the bark with his fingers. Once more, I must tax you. As I will again, and again. You must bear the evil my kind carries, and hold it within yourself for eons to come. Seth planted his staff between lines of bark and took a deep breath. He sensed the tree's store. Despite his visits, its capacity had only increased, perhaps fueled by growth, sunlight and water. As he exhaled, Seth discharged the probabilities that he had carried within him. Evil flowed through his staff and vanished into the tree's core. His mouth filled with a bitter taste. A part of him, his native evil, roared at the loss. Pure temptation urged him to tap the tree, drink the probabilities within. Drink? He stumbled to the stream and dipped his head beneath the water. The shock froze him to the skull, chasing his exhaustion into a corner and washing away temptation. He gulped a helping of water, raised his head from the stream, and spat the bitterness from his mouth. In time, he would succumb, if left to himself. No. He couldn't do that. Nor could he keep going it alone. Pharaoh was right. He needed an apprentice. Seth hadn't found the boy by happenstance. Cosmic forces had drawn them together. Dawn came as an orange swath cutting through the forest, a radiance that no lodestoner could match. He followed the stream for a mile, paralleling the bank until the water gave itself to the Gihon River. There, he found a young oak, packed with life and low-lying branches. Seth seized the end of a wrist-thick branch, letting the probabilities flow through his fingers. With his legs dangling from the cot, Pharaoh hefted the branch from his lap. What kind of tree is this? Oak, Seth said. The boy sniffed the broken end. Why'd you pick that? Seth lifted his staff and twirled it on his palm, directing the probabilities to keep it aloft. Probability flows best through oak. Pharaoh's eyes lit up. It's a good conductor, you mean? Seth gave a single nod. Your first task, as my apprentice, is to carve a staff for yourself. Pharaoh didn't smile, but his eyes did. Is oak a good condenser? Seth blinked at the boy. Pardon? Is that where you stored the probabilities you took from the sky? An oak tree? Seth lowered the staff to his side and considered. He almost told him. And he planned to, in time, but the boy was too young, and the temptation of the Azazel Tree too great. He raised a finger. Now, what kind of guild would we have, if its Grandmaster blabbed all its secrets in one session? And what kind of apprentice would I be, if I didn't try to pilfer them? Pharaoh leapt from the cot, tossing the branch in the air. He caught the oak with his thumb and whirled it from fingertip to fingertip. How's that? You learn quickly, Seth said. On the streets, you have to. With his free hand, Pharaoh covered his mouth, feigning a yawn. Remember your little knockout trick. I learned that too. Fatigue crashed upon him. His eyes ached with exhaustion. His vision blurred. In a stupor, he staggered to the cot, the staff slipping from his hands and clattering to the floor. The boy chuckled. Rest up, Seth. He woke to the aroma of pigeon and greens. Pharaoh looked up from tending the stove, giving a pan an absent stir, and grinned. Sleep well. How long have I been out? He lifted himself from the cot and stretched his limbs. It's mid-afternoon? The boy ladled stew into a wooden bowl. I didn't mean to sap you that hard. Didn't mean to. I missed a day's labor. Let the roofs roof themselves, Seth. The boy handed him the bowl. We're a guild unto ourselves. Taking the bowl, Seth nodded his thanks. If I don't roof, we starve. If we starve, there goes our guild. He sipped. The broth scalded his tongue, leaving a pungent aftertaste. In the corner, a newly carved staff rested atop a bed of oak shavings. Your staff is done, Seth observed. Pharaoh strolled to the corner and plucked his staff from the floor, examining it with narrowed eyes. I'd much prefer yours. Then it is yours, Seth said. No, then I don't want it. Pharaoh frowned, his nostrils crinkling in disgust. I don't want you to just give it to me. After stew, they trekked to the central plaza, in search of a cot for Pharaoh. As Seth navigated the maze of stalls and tents, he forced his face to uncurl. He disliked open markets with its dishonest hawkers, pickpockets, and the like. Above, the obsidian lines trembled with the confluence of evil. The boy tugged his sleeve. What's next? We find you a cot. Pharaoh shifted his staff from one hand to the other. I mean, what's next in my apprenticeship? Yanking the negative from the sky. Not so loud? Seth put a finger to his lips. Considering my sleep mishap, I think we need to slow the lessons down. The boy flattened his mouth, and thereafter, didn't sound more than a grunt. In time, Seth spotted a pile of cots under a blue-striped tent. As he rummaged through the wares, a merchantess approached, crafting her lips into a smile. He looked about for Pharaoh, but the boy was gone. In case you need me, I'm Havar, the merchantess said. Seth took in her plump figure, accentuated by an indigo gown a size too small, and felt the blood flush his cheeks. How much for your cots? A cot for one. Havar leaned her hip against the tent pole and twisted a coil of coppery hair. Or two. He cleared his throat. One. Would you require assistance in carrying it back to your abode? Her eyes flickered. Perhaps a demonstration of its many uses. His pulse quickened. True, he'd found her striking from the first glance, but now, desire thundered within him. In his mind's eye, he saw himself taking her home, and his heart began to scheme. What about Pharaoh, wherever he'd gotten off to? He didn't care. Nothing mattered but her. The boy could look after himself. Why had he bothered with the brat in the first place? In the sky, obsidian threads converged from all directions, tensing into a vortex. He realized what was happening. The probabilities were drawing him to evil like an iron mote to a lodestone. A thought occurred to him. And then another. You are married. Seth squeezed his staff and drew the probabilities into himself, good probabilities to fight the evil within. And a mother. Havar covered her mouth. How? I know. Desire faded, leaving his stomach to curdle. He'd felt disgusted with himself, at what he'd almost done. He lifted his staff toward the sky, and channeled the probabilities down. He drew and drew, bottling more evil than he'd ever drawn. Havar held her stomach with both hands. It's not like me. Seth fled the market, and hurried to Avalon Bottom. He didn't know how long he could hold this much evil. The sooner he was rid of it, the better. He followed the creek to the valley floor, trudged the stream, and clambered the mound. He collapsed before the Azazel Tree, gasping for air. His heart pounded within his ears. Without words or ceremony, Seth poked the bark with his staff, and funneled evil into the tree. As always, the Azazel tree drank it down, uttering no complaint. When he was done, a metallic aftertaste filled his mouth. He gagged. A single dry cough sounded. He looked up. In the midst of the forest shade, an oak stave swished at his forehead. Pain slammed his skull, sending flecks of white dancing across his vision, and then? Darkness.